Welcome into the Beat Sessions, your place for all things music. I'm your host, Mitchell Weary. Let's talk about this new record from Father John Misty, entitled Mahashmashana. He released that on November 22nd. This is studio album number 6 for Josh Tillman under the moniker, and his follow-up to 2022's Chloe and the Next 20th Century. Mahashmashana, it's a Sanskrit word for great cremation ground, and I think that it's not only a great title for this record, given what's going on thematically, but I would say that it really does a nice job of defining what Father John Misty's body of work is about in general. It's about the almost absurdity of life in and of itself. How and why are we here, knowing that there is our ultimate demise that every single one of us has to face, and how we choose to spend the time leading up to that. I love his angle as far as dealing with life and its thematic elements sardonically. I love the way that he's able to laugh about the absurdity, but also be incredibly insightful with regards to that. I think that talking about the title, Mahashmashana, when I think of the words great cremation ground, you think of like a burial ground in general. I think there's an endless number of images that title conjures up. And I think about, how lucky I've been to travel, the places that I've been, some of the burial grounds that I've seen myself, and the different ways that people honor and celebrate death. And I know for me, in my experience, when I gaze upon these monuments, I always have the same feeling of who were these people? What were their lives like? Especially the little stuff on the day to day, like what did they get up and do to start their day? Were they coffee drinkers? Did they like to crack a paper? Did they go out and, do yard work? There's all these, endless possibilities as far as the individual and the stories that, that can be told based on that. And I love that about Father John. I love his wit and the poignant detail that he writes with, and also the evocative nature of the lyrics. There's often a cryptic nature to what he's writing, but I think that in a way there's this roundabout effect where ultimately, given what's going on sonically and what it does to those words and how the listener chooses to interpret those words based on what they're hearing, he just does a brilliant job of creating these warm, nostalgic, familiar feelings while taking us through a very unique exploration. It's something that I've mentioned before in album reviews, where I'm feeling very emphatic about what's going on with the music. And if you can probably tell, I'm feeling very excited about this record. I think it's quite brilliant. One of the big differences, I would say, sonically, is that coming off of Chloe and the Next 20th Century, I thought that was a brilliant record. And I think that given the popularity of that mid-century kind of classic pop jazz standard feel, that is I don't want to say it's ubiquitous, because I don't think it's that big, but you definitely hear a lot of artists playing around with the style. And so I thought I thought Chloe was a cool project. I know that some critics were maybe a little dumbfounded by it, kind of surprised, and maybe themselves beaten to death by the aesthetic. But if you listen to that record, it's really, like anything this guy has done under the moniker. There's so much beautiful composition on that record, and there are so many musical nuances in those compositions that I think if you sit down and give that record the time, you'll see that, all right, it's actually very well put together. It's very well produced. The turns that the compositions take are, the type that they keep you engaged, that they keep the listener, wanting to come back for more. It really is an exceptional record. But this new record, Mahashmashana, getting back to more of that kind of, there's a lot of rock and roll influences. I know a lot of people point to the sort of 70s kind of rock and roll style that he's embodied under this moniker. I feel a lot of that, but there's definitely a few tracks where there's a fun garage rock influence at place. Working with Drew Erickson on this thing, but also a guy like Jonathan Wilson, being there in the room, helping with from a production angle. I know that he's a guy that can rock out when he wants to. He's written some damn good songs and put out some good stuff himself. So I love that Father John loves to collaborate with these two guys, especially Jonathan. And I think that the couple of tracks on this record, they really they dip into this almost like grungy garage rock, just almost like chaotic territory. That's it's fun to see him go there. There's what I love about this record too is he's still working with a lot of the influences that were driving Chloe. I think that they're much more in the backdrop. They're definitely taking a back seat in the compositions where they do make an appearance. But I think that that's what's so brilliant about that project and him being able to play around with that style, figuring it out and then drawing it into just his toolbox and being able to work that style into compositions that also capture funk and soul. And I mean, again, the garage rock, the punk, there's so much going on this record. 8 songs. It's no filler. It's got that classic record feel, and I love that about it. 50 minutes long, and it kicks off with the title track, Mahashmashana. I mean, it's very ballsy to do this, but I mean, you have a 10-minute album opener that is it's so big and cinematic, and I think it captures the essence of Father John Misty in 10 minutes. It's really quite impressive from a lyrical standpoint. I really love the way that he jumps just right out the gate, and midnight twice a week, she comes, she leaves, and no one's hassled her so far. The courtiers have arrived in nail polish and tailored slacks, reformed past all recognition, resplendent in donor class panache. Like, it's a scheme to enrich assholes, what the Godhead had in mind when he hid here such revelations as only singers could describe, which, it sounds like he's referring to himself there a little bit, opening this thing up. And so I love the melodrama. I love the just the almost like jester court like feel of the intro, this just just this big magnificent moment. People have been talking about with the title how could this be Father John Misty bearing this moniker, and I don't think he is. I think it's such a phenomenal moniker. Just the idea of father, the idea of listening to this guy truly feels like going to church. Like, I know it sounds cheesy, but I will say it. I think that it is the best moniker for this guy right now. And especially when you read along with the lyrics, when you really digest lyrically what's going on there, it feels like you're just enjoying a good sermon with much better background music is what I meant to say there. Get that spit out there. But Mahashmashana, I love the drum roll, the alternative folk feel. You get that just breezy acoustic rhythm guitar. Tempo's down pace. This is a pretty mellow song to open up, but it's got big orchestration as this thing goes to work. Big strings. They're definitely feeling like a bridge coming off of Chloe. Like, I like almost like it opens up as a continuation of that. And it just feels like it's bridging the gap. So I thought that was cool. Just the piano is amazing. The just gorgeous, vivid imagery and wit that's on display throughout the lyrics. I read you some of them there. I really like, towards the end here, I'll read what he says here at the end. It ain't the kind of thing you tell, like there's no baby in the king cake, like there's no figure on the cross. They have gone the way of all flesh, and what was found is lost. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And like I said, there's that sense about his music, that impending sense of doom where, you look at that and you might think it's very bleak and very dark and almost kind of morbid, but he's the type of guy that, while I think the idea of always keeping that in the back of your head, the idea that every day could be our last, is what makes, waking up every day so splendid, and, makes it worth taking the plunge and going after things and being adventurous and taking risks. And I think that, sometimes we have our failures and sometimes that's comedic. And I think that all of these experiences, Father John just has, these are all things that writers write about, but I think that Father John just has a slightly better way of illustrating it than most singers. Just my opinion on that anyway. Your second song, She Cleans Up, grungy, upbeat, retro rocker. Like I really love just the energy coming off the opening track, Mahashmashana. She Cleans Up. It reminds me, it's got a bit of like a Queens of the Stone Age vibe. I would definitely argue. You get these spitfire lyrics that are infectious, layers of fuzzy guitars, and then what I like is that you get other layers of guitar that have a cleaner tone, bit of kind of like a glam feel. So it's a great contrast there, and all the guitars that are going to work. Love the production that's there. Sax solo comes ripping in. I love that element. This track is really pure fire. I love it. I love the energy, and definitely showing that high energy rock and roll side of Father John, which is it's a fun side of him. I dig it. Josh Tillman and the Accidental Dose is your third track. Not the first time that he's referred to himself in this way in a title of a song, and I think that's what's so unique about him as well. I didn't bring it up, but from a lyrical standpoint, Josh Tillman's the type of guy that he's built up this larger than life persona with Father John Misty, but there's something about his music that it's so authentic and it feels so personal, where it's like, where do you draw the line between the person and the alter ego? And I think that he's always done such a phenomenal job of blending that and kind of making that a big part of his mystique. And it's it's just one of the many things that makes him so unique. But this track, you get this bluesy, jazzy piano, opens up this mid-tempo groove. The bleakness to the mood is just impressive. Like I really like the way that he sets that there. Bits of guitar working in and out, the strings working sparsely before becoming a big element on this song. And they just build up into this very harrowing coda. It really is a song with a lot of powerful imagery. I love the opening. She put on Astro Weeks, said, "I love jazz," and winked at me. This is the last place I ought to be, but I can't drive and I sure can't sleep. Around this time, I publicly was treating acid with anxiety. It's like really intense lyricism there. I absolutely love what he's got going on. So phenomenal track there. It leads into your fourth song, Mental Health, which is, we've been talking about it a lot, musical irony, and coming off of Chloe and working with that pop style, this track, given the title, it's just so funny that the music really sounds very almost like Disney-esque is the only way that I can really describe it. Just a big dreamy classic pop feel. There's a bit of country, I feel like, that's kind of at the base of this song too, but the piano floats along like a raft for his stunning vocal performance. I really dig the song, the lyrics on this song, and it's again just another display of why he is just so poetic. But romantic strings, light congos that work in. I really like that world percussion and the balance of those two components on this song. Wind instruments, and you're going to get a bump in that world percussion. It definitely becomes more prominent as the song progresses. Elements that take hold just give this song a big cinematic flair, and then it swells to this just big number before fading into a gentle coda. It's going to lead into your fifth song. Screamland is pretty interesting. I enjoy this track a lot. It's got this gorgeous vocal and piano intro, sorrowful strings that rise and fall with just gentle grace. It's really nicely done. Other strings that work in and out, they're higher pitched. They create a bit of dissonance, which I really found very interesting. Drums hit and it becomes this chaotic rocker. And I love the energy, just the frenetic chaos that is created when the song takes that turn. And it's going to do this a couple of times. There's like a calmer turn with just piano and vocal. You get these softly rolling drums, a lot of work on the toms that, again, build. You get strings that swell, and just an array of pitches. And then, back to that rockin' feel about halfway through, mellows back. And I really like the way once it does that, it kind of changes. You get a focus on the percussion, ambience with the vocal, and then just that build back to the rockin' coda once again. It is a fun track. Maybe one of my favorites. It's tough to pick a favorite track on this record. Honestly, they're all so unique and all very well done. Being You is your sixth track. You get this elevator. It's kind of like an elevator-like synth. Just think of kind of like that just dreamy, almost kind of like slightly psychedelic pop sound. Slow but deliberate percussion. Get this retro minimalism, and again with that psychedelia, and it really made me think of what Beck was doing on Sea Change on a number of tracks on that record. Another great saxophone component on this track, really just driving with that mid-century noir feel, with a bit of strings that are working in, but I like how it didn't feel like the songs on Chloe. And this song's a really good example of what I was talking about as far as, really playing around with that influence, finding a way to work with it and then incorporating that into these new compositions. It's a pretty cool element. I guess Time Just Makes Fools of Us All is your 7th song and penultimate track. It's a fantastic song title. Jazzy horn and drum-driven intro evolves into this funky soul number. There's definitely a disco drive to this track. I love the energy, the breezy acoustic rhythm guitar, layered percussive elements. Just give it this galloping feel. It's so infectious and so groovy. A lot of disco flair again. There's like some mariachi nuances that I felt too, some Latin influences that work in. There's a lot going on. I really like the bluesy breakdown that's got a little bit of disco driving it as well. Piano solo that's there. Cool drum breakdown as well. And I like the way that leads back into just the main structure of this song. And you're going to get a sax solo as well that's going to come in kind of like a structural breakdown and then taking that turn as well. Most of these songs are enormous. I think the shortest one is As She Cleans Up, coming in at 4:26. Actually, no, your finals track, Summer's Gone, that we're about to get into, is 4 minutes and 17 seconds long. It's but yeah, everything else is just very expansive and not to its detriment. It's a very difficult thing to do, but I think Father John is it's one of the highlights of this record as far as the track composition and the way that these longer songs especially, they don't feel drawn out, they don't feel dull, and like they reach any level of boredom for the listener. But Summer's Gone has got this classic mid-century pop feel, the piano, the swelling strings. Josh delivers just an incredible vocal that conveys this sense of longing, but it's also grounded in hope. It definitely reminds you of kind of just this like pensive solo moment for the main character. And just, think of like any musical where, that individual has hopes and desires and they're aspiring for them. It's a brilliant feel that he's created with Summer's Gone to match that kind of like cinematic nature, that theatrical nature. An impressive way to close out what is, just another impressive album from a really unique, one-of-a-kind artist. New rating system. I'm going to give this thing an 8.6 out of 10. It's really a highlight for me this year. If you haven't had a chance to check this out, I really hope you enjoyed this record, and I hope you find this review helpful as well. Please like this video, share it, subscribe to the channel, do all the things to help me blow this project up in 2024, and tune into the live show, Classic Wax. It's 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday nights, and we will see you next time on the Beat Sessions.